Rakdos has returned, bringing you an Acolyte Reaper build guide for Last Epoch. For those of you unfamiliar, Last Epoch is an action RPG that has been in early access for quite some time, but has recently released a new patch with an updated crafting system. This game has been recommended to me heavily by those who know I love Path of Exile. I finally decided to take a look. Those knowing me intimately know how much I can't resist a good Necromancer build. Something about the summoning of minions, having a horde at my disposal to soak damage, and most of the time being able to drain the life from my enemies. The Acolyte did not disappoint on any of these fronts. Before I go into the gear, I want to give you a breakdown of the skills that we're using. The centerpiece of the build is Wandering Spirits. As this is the first class that I've ever played in Last Epoch, this skill ended up being my first choice by a bit of an accident. Sure, let's do that for now. And then how do we switch over to the other thing? Will it just be down here? It's not down here. Skills, S. Yep. Oh, I picked it. Can I unpick it? No. The decision has been made for me, it seems. But I will comply. This skill does it. And I could not be happier with the results from this skill. Let's break it down. Here we have the Wandering Spirits skill tree. The skill will reveal spirits around you for a duration. These spirits will wander around aimlessly and phase through enemies. Enemies in an area around them will start to take necrotic damage over time. There are a lot of interesting ways that this skill can be built, but having experience scaling similar area of effect style skills in other action RPGs, I was able to leverage a lot of free damage out of this skill. The two primary nodes you're looking for are Locust Mortis. This node will allow you to target a location for your wandering spirits rather than having the spirits just appear around you all the time. I have found this to be very useful, but I could see a version of this build without it, where you continue to cast the spirits around yourself. Next is the real game changer, Song of the Lost Chantry. This is going to change how your wandering spirit functions. It changes from a cooldown skill to a skill that you channel. This is why we have it on our right click. It's also going to greatly increase the rate at which new spirits are generated. After you have these two, there are a lot of options that you can go for damage. The two primary damage nodes would be Reap the Damned and Tethered Existence. This build manages to crank massive numbers without either of them. Tethered Existence is very strong. The spirit move speed reduction seems like a negative, but keeping the spirits in the vicinity of the enemies for longer could increase your damage. Reap the Damned, when you build this correctly, every point gives you plus 24% increased damage. Very hard for other nodes to compete with this. Yet we don't take these at all because of how the skill scales. Let me show you. This is how Wandering Spirits looks when you first acquire it. You like that?
Get my ghosties out.
But ours looks like this. Another benefit to channeling this skill, other channeling skills will continuously drain mana, where we are able to recover mana in this state. And if you notice, our ward is constantly being cranked out by spirits being expended. On top of the defensive layer that the ward provides us, all of the damage dealt by these spirits will be leached back to us in life. When they expire, we get a massive ward bonus as all of them disappear at once. Daunting Presence will increase the size of each of the spirits and the area in which they deal damage. This is our damage all-star. Making the spirits so large and packing them so tightly means that enemies that are small have low enough life to die the moment they touch one of our spirits. But enemies that are large will be touching so many of our spirits at once that the damage is multiplicative. No other damage bonus on this tree can compete with stacking 3 or 4 more spirits on top of a single enemy. Another talent that you might want to experiment with is Familiar Souls. This will reduce the reveal range of your spirits, allowing them to cluster more closely around your channeled target. Now, when picking skills for a build that channels, you want a lot of automated damage. If you are going to spend most of your time here channeling, you want to avoid having a lot of spells that you need to stop and cast, specifically ones that you would need to cast multiple times to be truly effective. Our skill selections are Reaper Form, Spirit Plague, Hungering Souls, and Death Seal. Let's start with Reaper Form. Reaper Form is absolutely ridiculous. At the very minimum of its power, it is a secondary life pool that you can leech life back to very, very easily, and is far more defensive than you are in your regular form. Not only this, the skill offers a much needed boost in mobility with the Reap cooldown recovery. 90% cooldown recovery speed means that you can cast Reap very often, and Sweeping Sights allows each of those casts to take you farther. These in combination will allow you to dodge almost every major telegraphed attack in boss fights. As soon as you see them charging up, whatever that animation might look like, typically one Reap will be enough to get you out of there, and Reap will almost always be available. In Reaper form, your life bar turns gray and begins slowly draining. If you die in this form, you are reverted back to your original form with full life.
It eludes me. It eludes.
On RW, we have Spirit Plague. This is an incredibly fast casting area of effect damage over time spell, with the primary benefit of being able to spread to nearby targets when the original target dies. This means that you can cast it on a single enemy and kill an entire pack, and maybe even a secondary pack if they happen to run into the first pack as it's dying. Some of the great features of Spirit Plague will be that it will apply frailty stacks and slow stacks, giving you a temporary reprieve from damage. Feel free to take Calamitous until higher levels. This will make Spirit Plague feel much better and clear much more efficiently. On our E, we have Hungering Souls. There could be better options for this slot, and my inexperience with this game and the class might show here, but I really like the automated skills. And when I saw that this not only dealt base necrotic damage, which was my primary damage type, it dealt damage over time, which I did know I would be doing with the Wandering Spirits, and it can be cast automatically when you take damage, when you are hit. In total, you have a 25% chance to cast Hungering Souls when you are hit. The primary benefit of Hungering Souls will be to apply on-hit effects, as damage over time based builds don't really get a chance to benefit primarily from those very strong on-hit effects, such as on-hit slow, on-hit frailty, so on and so forth. And last, but certainly not least, the Death Seal. This skill is ridiculous. It is the hugest damage steroid that I think I have ever seen in a game. When I press Death Seal, my damage, I'm going to be generous and say triples, but I'm pretty sure it's more than that. So we will break it down. Primarily, I wanted to increase its duration, and I decided to take Devouring Release, which allows it to periodically fire out a single Hungering Soul. I figured this will be empowered from all of these skill points, so I might as well take it. And a single point to increase the frequency by 32% is worth it. Necrosis is very powerful in my opinion. Because we have so much ward, when we use the Death Seal, our ward will be removed anyway, so we might as well be getting a bonus for it. This allows our Waves of Death to shred necrotic resistance, which is something that this build doesn't have a lot of. So this boosts our damage by 40% possibly. Mortal Pulse is a massive note to take. This is going to make your Death Wave cast every second instead of at the end of the duration. You need this because the damage from Death Seal and these pulses will be affected by your lifesteal. So by the sheer virtue of having this active, it will keep you alive. You will be releasing pulses that will heal you for massive amounts. I do plan on increasing the frequency of these pulses if I can find some spare points. Deadlock is a must take for this build. When you activate Death Seal, your health will immediately be locked at 33%. This is directly underneath the 35% minimum for counting as being on low life. There are several things that this class has going for it that will boost its damage while it is on low life. How much did that just do? Was that 25,000? That's just Death Seal. That's just Death Seal. And then when it all comes together. For the Acolyte skill tree, I chose to put most of our points into Forbidden Knowledge to shore up our necrotic resistances and give us a little bit of intelligence for some ward sustain. 5 points in Stolen Vitality. This could be changed or altered with points in Mania of Mortality. Both of these are pretty good. 5 out of 5 in Crimson Gluttony, primarily for the reduced health drain. This will slow the drain of your Lich form. And absolutely max Unnatural Preservation. This is phenomenal. 40% ward retention plus those resistances are unbeatable. The rest of your points you're going to be dumping into the Lich. You want to get off of your first 5 points with Dance of Death. If you are struggling, I would suggest putting 5 points in Survival of the Cruel instead, because this early spell leech will help get through the middle of the game, but only if you're struggling. Otherwise, go straight for the Dance of Death. Grasp of Fate is an important pickup, but if you are having a hard time with taking damage, get Soul Barrier and get the Life Barrier as soon as you can. For the middle here, I chose to go with the Crippling Insight. Only take as many points in this as you can handle. Max out 3 Plagues. This is one of the only instances of Necrotic Penetration that we get for free. Also, max out Necrotic Energy. Giving base damage to your skills is far more rare than having the ability to increase their damage by percentages. Therefore, base damage is much more valuable. I swapped my 5 points in Survival of the Cruel for Soul Maw when I got here, and then eventually reduced it down to 3 as I was doing so much damage that I was healing too much. And then, of course, Corrosive Consciousness is one of the best nodes that we can take for dealing damage over time from spells. Let's put it into action. 3, 2, 1. Take note of how long I can sustain Reaper form as long as there are enemies to drain the life from. As far as gearing the Spirit Reaper, you will want to focus on a few primary stats. For offensive stats, you will want to prioritize +2 skill levels, as every single skill level for this build, it could be potential huge damage increase or versatility increase. Next, I chose to prioritize necrotic damage, as this will increase the damage of the hits of things like the Death Seal, and will increase the damage over time of things like Wandering Spirits. Third, I chose damage over time, as the Spirit Plague and the Wandering Spirits both benefit heavily from this. And last, I'm going to put cast speed on here. I can't be sure yet, but from what I've seen with the tooltip damage, Wandering Spirits scales heavily with cast speed. Cast speed has increased the tooltip damage far more than I have expected it to, and haven't really noticed a difference in what it affects as far as the channeling. So it could be a bug, but if not, cast speed will increase your damage. And as for the defensive stats that I chose to focus on, primarily you should focus on endurance and endurance threshold. These mechanics allow you to take much less damage when you are at low life, and if you can increase your endurance threshold up to around where your life will be at during your Death Seal, then by my estimation, you should be far more resilient at 1/3 of your max HP than you are even at 100% of your max HP. The next defensive stat to focus on would be ward gain and ward retention. Ward is incredibly powerful, as it will help mitigate the degen from your Reaper form, and it will also empower your Death Seal to do things like shred enemy resistances and possibly provide you additional defenses. And finally, I chose to focus on armor. Most of the gear for the Acolyte will have armor in its base, so it just seemed natural to try to stack it up at least a little bit. Armor in Last Epoch mitigates damage from almost every source except damage over time. So it is fairly useful to have on most builds. And this should go without saying. Cap your damn resistances. Just do it. Get them all at 75 at least. Come on, what are you doing?
Feel my wrath.
And finally, I'll leave you with some gameplay tips that I noticed along the way. As you can see, as I channel wandering spirits, and they disappear over time, I will gain ward for each one that disappears. When I use Death Seal, as it states, it will remove all of my ward, as it does. But it does not state anywhere that I cannot gain ward through certain methods while this is active. But, as you saw there, I was not able to gain ward with my wandering spirits while it was active. This is very important because letting go of your channeling, as you can see, gives you a massive boost of ward as all of your spirits disappear. If you end your channeling while Death Ward is active, you are robbed of all of this ward. So my advice, make sure that Death Ward is no longer pulsing before you let go of your wandering spirits. This will help tremendously with your ward retention. Thank you so much for checking out my Spirit Reaper guide for Last Epoch. Please leave a like if this was helpful or informative, and let me know in the comments if there's any interactions that I might have missed or that could benefit me. And as always, peace, peace.